Another photo of a landscape that we'd all like to see. Transport, probably a lot of interest from this group in transport. As I said, we've released a high-speed rail report. We're doing work on electric vehicles. And as I said, the transport plan falls nicely out of the energy plan, because the energy plan shows we can have 100% renewable energy in Australia. That means if you've got a grid which is powered by 100% renewable energy, you can have a transport system. There's electrical, you can have electric vehicles which are 100% renewable energy, trams, trains, buses, trucks, the list goes on.
Yeah, biofuels, and that's if your energy grid is completely 100% renewable and just use electricity as an energy input source to get your biofuels.
Yeah.
Then that becomes over.
Look, on biofuels, we believe that biofuels should be used for those transport purposes for which electricity cannot be used. So we all know that air travel is challenging when it comes to electric aeroplanes. So we're encouraging mode shift from air to rail, high-speed rail, where it makes sense, and we believe, and I'll show you some future slides on the Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane corridor, where high-speed rail makes absolute sense, and I'll present that case for you in another few slides. So biofuels really should be saved for those purposes where you cannot use electricity. And then you've got, because there are resource constraints on producing biofuels in Australia too. I just happened to be around when the ethanol revolution was occurring, and I was dealing a lot with the ethanol industry and the biofuels industry as it was emerging 10 years ago. The reality is, to make biofuels you need the feedstock, and to have the feedstock there are also resource constraints on having enough feedstock to potentially make enough biofuels to power all of the transport systems. That's why we're promoting very strongly electric grid, renewable energy grid, therefore electric vehicles, electric rail, and electric buses, trams, trucks, etc., and then using biofuels for those purposes can't be used with electricity.
Would trucks ever be suitable for electric trucks, for long-haul trucks?
We believe in the cities to start with, and again, as the battery technology changes and improves, there may be scope for long-haul trips. Again, a number of models that could be thought through in terms of battery replacement along the way, etc.
Peter, can I just get you to repeat the questions with the online audience?
Yeah. So this is the transport work we've been doing. We've started that work with high-speed rail. We've done a lot of work on how we can re-engineer public transport in Australia, and particularly in the capital cities, obviously, electric vehicles, and looking at behavioural shifts when it comes to air travel. Just to go through some of the slides on high-speed rail, this work was done by Melbourne University, the German Aerospace Centre, as well as BZE, so it was a great collaboration between those three organisations, and was launched in Sydney and Melbourne in April, and we're aiming for a Brisbane launch in September. This slide shows you the volume and density of the different modes of travel in Australia. The blue being air, the green being bus, the grey being passenger vehicles, and the red being rail. You can see here the density and volume of travel that takes place between Melbourne and Sydney in particular, but also Sydney and Brisbane. These are some of the busiest air routes in the world. Sydney-Melbourne is the 5th busiest air route in the world, and we don't have high-speed rail. Sydney-Brisbane is the 12th busiest air route in the world, and we don't have high-speed rail. These routes compare with the busiest air routes in every other continent. Beijing, Shanghai, as busy. Busier than San Francisco, LA, the busiest air route in the US. Busier than Madrid, Barcelona, the busiest air route in Europe. There is no reason that we should not have high-speed rail in these sectors. This is the kind of future we can have. This is a future, by the way, that has been the present in Europe for 30 years. Has been the present in Japan since 1965. It's just astounding that we've had other countries have high-speed rail for over 30 years, and in Australia, with the busiest air routes in the world, we don't have high-speed rail. We've done a lot of detailed analysis on the route, and because of the route that we've selected, which is not dissimilar to the previous government study on high-speed rail in Australia, but our route is slightly different and less tunnelling, less bridge work, which means that the capital costs are reduced substantially. We've shown that we can build high-speed rail in Australia for $84 billion. That's $30 billion less than the previous government study. Now, $84 billion, who thinks that's a lot of money?
It's more than I've got at the moment.
It's a lot of money. Who knows how much we spend on roads transport every year? How much? Guess.
30.
Come on, guess. 18. We spend $18 billion a year on roads. So $84 billion, a lot of money, sure, but so is 18. And 84 is only about 5 years of expenditure on roads. So let's get our priorities right. Let's get more cars off the road and into rail, and all cars going to electric. And then we'll really do something with emissions.
The high-speed rail you showed there is like the traditional train on steel tracks. I know there's a lot of other range of different ways to do a rail system. Have you sort of looked at any alternatives? Or?
Yeah, look, just for the audience online, the question is about the type of technology that we've looked at with high-speed rail. BZE's mission is to look at existing technologies. We don't have time to wait 20 years to address climate change by waiting for new technologies. This technology, as I said, has existed in Japan for 40 years, over 40 years, in Germany for over 30 years. In China, they are going gangbusters with high-speed rail. In fact, the person I spoke to from the German Aerospace Centre was saying that high-speed rail in Europe is not high-speed rail. It's a very fast train. China is is high-speed rail. Their trains are going 450 kilometres an hour. In Europe, they're more like 300, 350. Same with Japan. So China is really pushing this hard. They've got routes going, through all of the major capital cities where you pretty much live in Shanghai and work in Beijing and vice versa. So,
that's still the traditional steel rail.
question again for the audience online is whether that's still steel tracks and steel rails and other things. Look, there's a variety of technologies out there, but again, you've got the maglev technology, you've got a whole range of different ones. We've been looking at what you can do to build the route, how much that would cost, using existing technologies. The technology to actually build the rail and rolling stock is not the biggest cost. It's building, it's having the land availability, building, clearing the track, digging the tunnels, having the support road along the side, having the tunnels and bridges. That's really the biggest cost. The other costs are much lower order of magnitude. So we looked at the rail path, and that, as I said, that aligns quite closely with the route selected by the previous government. The previous government and the current government are interested in high-speed rail, which is very encouraging. We had John Alexander, the member for Bennelong, John Howard's former seat, present the keynote presentation at our launch in Melbourne. So that's very encouraging that we've got bipartisan support. The government and the previous government are very keen to secure the corridor, because to build high-speed rail you need to secure the land, and they're working with state and territory governments to be able to do that. So it is very encouraging, and we also have a lot of support from the local governments along the route. We've had the Lord Mayor of Shepparton, we've had the Mayor of Goulburn, we've had a number of mayors, including in Hume, supporting high-speed rail, because they know that this opens up regional areas for development. We also know that it allows people in Shepparton to work in Melbourne. It allows people in Goulburn to be able to work in Sydney. It also depresses and alleviates urban congestion and eases some of the prices that we're seeing in Melbourne and Sydney as we move to cities of 8 million people or more. So high-speed rail has enormous benefits, social, economic, regional, as well as, most importantly, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. As I said, we've done a lot of work on the construction and cost, and happy to talk a lot more about high-speed rail. Electric vehicles. This work, as with a lot of BZD's work, is about busting the myths that renewable energy won't work when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, that you can't build high-speed rail cost effectively. The electric vehicles are clunky and they look bad and they're low performing and they don't drive very far. So the electric vehicle report will be really showing that electric vehicles are high performing, they're modern, comfortable, they have a range of benefits including low maintenance costs, no fuel costs, high performance, acceleration, etc., and they look good. You know, that they are not some kind of car that's going to be clunky and not meet our needs. Our research has shown that electric vehicles will meet 93% of all passenger trips undertaken in Australia. 93%. So a lot of people go, oh, no, I won't be able to use my electric vehicle for all of my needs. Maybe not, but you better meet them for 93% of your needs on average. And for those long distance trips, or when you go out in the desert, or when you go, you know, camping out in the middle of nowhere, you might like to hire a car. But in the meantime, you can have an electric vehicle to meet the majority of your needs. Obviously, you guys all know this, so I don't want to go over this in a lot of detail, but you know, cars are a pretty important part of our lives. They're the ultimate symbol of freedom, ultimate symbol of power in many cases. We use a lot of fuel in this country. We consume 18 billion litres of petrol, all imported, $20 billion a year that we spend in this country on importing fuel to run our cars. That's a pretty big impact on our balance of payments. Not only that, is passenger vehicle emissions account for 7% of all of our emissions in Australia. That's a huge number. If you include trucks and buses and other things, you get up to 12%. So if we can move to electric vehicles as quickly as possible, and we all know that is possible right now, then we can immediately save ourselves $20 billion worth of Australian dollars being spent on importing petrol, and we can have a dramatic impact on reducing emissions. And this report will also be looking at how electric vehicles can enhance our way of life, lower noise in the city. Who goes to bed at night and you can hear that hum of, you know, background noise of motor vehicles? You know, electric vehicles, there'll still be some noise of the tyres on the road and other things, but you can just imagine cities will be a lot quieter. Other benefits like being able to charge your car during the day. You go to a shopping centre, you go to work, you plug your car in, you come home, you guys all know this, I'm speaking to the converted, plug it in, enhance the grid, use it to run your car, support your battery, use it to run your house, support your batteries that might be, or the grid that might be being really stressed at that time with everyone coming home and switching everything on to do cooking and watching TV, etc. We're looking at the range of models out there. Again, this report is about not saying we have to wait for these technologies in the future. It's about saying these technologies are here right now. Here's a range of different makes and models. Here's what they can do. Here's their range. Here's their speed. Here's their storage capacity, etc., etc., etc. You all know the Tesla Model S is being launched in September or so. And you all know that that vehicle can go from 0 to 100 in 4.4 seconds. You know, when people... Excellent. Yep. Excellent. And you know, so when people say they're not high performing, you just say, have a drive.
White zombie.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, I don't need to tell you guys about this stuff.